Hey there everybody, Elizabeth Hines here from Total Wellness Health Coaching. Welcome to my kitchen. Welcome back. If you are not new, welcome for the first time. If you are new, I would love for you to introduce yourself down in the comments. Let me just welcome you personally. My channel has been around for about 4 or 5 years, I think. I was Our Paleo Family for a long time, and then turned it into Functional Medicine Living, I think is what I'm called now. But my website is Total Wellness Health Coaching. I kind of wanted to move away from that paleo name because we are kind of branching out from paleo in my family. However, I'm still a huge fan of paleo. If you're new to functional medicine, new to kind of getting your health under control with diet and lifestyle, the paleo diet is a great place to start. I have information that I can link down below about what is paleo, what is autoimmune paleo, what is that for, why would you want to follow that. But I'm doing a little more broad typed recipes these days, not strictly paleo. And if you have been following along with my last few videos, you know that we are doing some sourdough in my house. All gluten-free. We are still gluten-free, 100%. But we're kind of dipping our toes in the gluten-free sourdough movement. So today we're going to make biscuits, one of my very, 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 very favorite foods on the planet. And on my old website, there were, I don't know, 4 or 5, maybe even 6 recipes for biscuits. I have been working on a good biscuit recipe that fit our particular diet for a long, long time. And I have some good paleo biscuit recipes for sure if you need to stick with paleo. But since we can now do a little bit of grains and a little bit of dairy, I have found the most amazing biscuit recipe, and that's what I'm going to share with you today, and it uses my sourdough starter. Before I show you that recipe, I just want to give you one quick update on the sourdough starter, and that is that I was getting kind of sad because I thought, I'm not going to be able to continue the sourdough, even though I've come up with some recipes that we love, like these biscuits, the scones, on and on and on. Because I don't need to make something every day. And sourdough is something that it's alive. You have to feed it every day. And so you either have to be using it or throwing it away. And I mean, all food is expensive across the board. Gluten-free food is even more expensive. And I just could not be throwing it away. So I know that you can sort of park your sourdough in the fridge. It'll go dormant-ish, and then you can pull it out and feed it. Well, I did that for about 4 days at a time, and then 5 days at a time, and then a week at a time. And it was never quite right when I pulled it out. I basically started over at one point a few weeks ago. Well, this starter now, I've been feeding it with mostly either brown rice flour or this King Arthur gluten-free blend. And actually I have this because it was on sale at Thrive Market, really, really good sale, and I bought several bags of it. So I just had more of that than my buckwheat and teff and sorghum and this whole blend I put together. That's how I started my sourdough, and it worked great. But I decided to try just one of these blends just for my own personal convenience. And I feel like the taste of the products is the same. It's fermented just the same, but I've been able to leave it in the fridge dormant for a longer period of time. So this starter was in the fridge for 2 weeks. I knew I was pushing it. I knew I was potentially going to have to start over. But I pulled it out this morning. Oh my goodness, look at it. I pulled it out this morning. So this bowl, this old Pampered Chef bowl, I love it because for a lot of reasons, but it has measurements on the side. I took it down to about a cup of starter. I did throw some away because I had about 3 cups in there, and I wanted to feed it and get it real bubbly and happy again. And so I threw away about 2 cups of it and left a cup, so that I didn't have to feed. If I had 3 cups of starter, I would have needed to feed it 3 cups of flour, and I would have had this enormous amount of starter, and I did not want that. So I took it down to about a cup, maybe a cup and a half. I fed it about a cup to a cup and a half of flour and equal amount of water, stirred it up, And I mean, it's about 6 cups now. And I already used a half a cup to make a batch of scones that are getting ready to go in the oven. And I need to turn the oven on for those. So, wow, I hope that makes sense. But all that to say, I've been able to keep this guy in the fridge for a couple weeks. He was totally fine. I did throw away some, so there was some waste, which I could have used to make some pancakes for breakfast or waffles for breakfast, or I could have made some pizza crusts and stuck in the freezer, something like that. But I simply did not have time to do that today. I made the choice to throw some away. But that was, you know, it had grown. It didn't really represent 2 cups of flour. It represented maybe a cup of flour. Instead of doing that every single day or forcing myself to cook something that I don't really need to every single day, it was just that little bit of waste over the course of 2 weeks instead of what would have been either an excessive amount of baking or an excessive amount of waste. Follow me? Don't hesitate to ask me any questions. I know it's confusing, but I want you to just see how bubbly and happy and active it is. So it's summer right now, but our house is air conditioned. But it is still warmer and more humid in here than it would be in the wintertime, just because it's like a real feel outside of about 100 today. Super hot, super humid. So it just real happy here. Okay, so let's make the biscuits. I need to start with 4 tablespoons, I'll get to that in a minute, 4 tablespoons of cold butter. You can make this dairy-free if you want. I'm not. I'm using butter, and I'm using buttermilk. But you could use lard, which I was going to use lard, but my lard is outside, and so I'm just being lazy. Or you could use cold palm shortening. I actually have done that with some of my paleo biscuit recipes, and it really does work just fine. But I really like the butter flavor, and we are all tolerating butter really well right now. It was not super safe. I should have not been lazy and gotten out a cutting board. So we're going to do like a typical biscuit recipe. I'm going to cut my butter into my flour mixture. So if you've ever seen that in a recipe and you have no idea, what does that mean to cut in the butter? I'm going to show you. So I want a cup of this gluten-free flour and a quarter, cup and a quarter. This is a weird measurement, 1/3 of a teaspoon of salt. So I know most of you probably don't have 1/3 of a teaspoon measuring spoon. I don't, measuring spoon, and I don't either, but this is a quarter. So I just want a quarter and a little more. It's like not quite a half, but a quarter wasn't quite enough. So it's going to make it a little tricky to write up the recipe for you, but I'll manage. Okay, so shy of a half a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of baking powder, and a half a teaspoon of baking soda. So that's our dry. And I'm just going to put these out of the way so I remember that I'm done. I'll tell on myself today. I've been growing these zinnias at the mailbox all spring. I love zinnias. They're so pretty to cut and bring inside. Well, they got some kind of disease this summer and just have not been looking great. The foliage is turning brown, and they're just not looking very good. But yet they continue to bloom. And so they're just looking so ugly. I thought, I really need to yank those out of the ground. And before doing that, well, let me just cut them. I haven't cut them and brought any in all summer. And honestly, that's half of why I grow zinnias, is because they're so pretty to cut and bring inside. And they last for a long time. So it's Wednesday, we homeschool, we meet with our big group, and I teach a class all day on Tuesday. The kids and I are just always exhausted on Tuesdays. And then Wednesday is Wednesday's the start of the next school week for us, so Wednesdays are always super busy day. But yet, it's still summer, it's the growing season. I had to tend to my garden and stuff. So this morning, just kind of in a rush, I went out, I picked the garden, I checked things for watering, and then I went and I cut these zinnias. And I came in and I was, rushing. I need to shower and I need to, start getting going with school stuff for the week. And I had the flowers. I picked the leaves off just like you're supposed to, so there aren't leaves underwater. And I arranged them in the vase, la-ti-da, and I went about my day. Like 6 hours later, I came downstairs and my son was here, and I was like, why are my zinnias so wilted? They usually last for weeks cut. They just really have a lot of longevity once they're cut. And I realized I had not put any water in the vase. So I put some water in, lickety split, and that was maybe an hour ago. And they have started to perk back up. I don't think they're going to rebound fully, but if I get a couple days out of them, I'll be happy. So while I was telling you the story of my forgetfulness, I've been cutting in my butter into my flour. So number one, you really want your butter, or whatever fat you use. If you use lard or palm shortening, you want it to be really cold. And I'm just using my hands because I think it's way easier, but I think it's called cutting in because have you ever seen those pastry cutters? It's like a wooden handle and then kind of a elongated half circle or like a half oval of these wires, and you would just use that and it would kind of do the same thing that I just did with my hands, but I would rather just use my hands than have another tool in my drawer. So you can zoom in from above and see it's like wet clumpy sand is kind of the texture. And then we want to mix in our wet ingredients. Let me wash my hands. Okay, so our wet ingredients, we have 3 things. We have starter, honey, and milk. And so just because the consistency of the starter is not always the same, sometimes it's a little more liquidy, sometimes it's a little thicker, I'm going to put the other liquids in before I put in my milk. Okay, so a half a cup of the starter and a half a tablespoon of honey. I'm not going to measure that. I'm just going to squirt in a little honey. And then a quarter of a cup of milk. And I'm using buttermilk because it tastes so good and makes such a nice finished biscuit. But you could use any kind of milk. And I've used regular cow's milk. I've used almond milk. I have used buttermilk, just those 3. Those are my main ones. We don't usually do oat milk or any of those things, but I wouldn't see why you couldn't. They're going to be a similar texture to the almond milk. So there's all this like liquid on my spatula. So before I add more liquid, I'm going to get my hands in there. You want to be kind of gentle with it, but you also want to get everything mixed in. This is a little dry. I think I need just a teeny bit more. Oh, I didn't quite get it all out of my measuring cup. But if I got every bit out, that would be just the right amount. I need just a touch more. So just bear in mind, depending on the flour that you use, depending on how dry your air is or moist your air is, you may need a teeny bit more or less liquid. You shouldn't really need less than the quarter of a cup, but I'm not going to say absolutely, okay? So it's good to learn what it should look like, what it should feel like. So you can see how mine is, it's not this sloppy, wet mass. It's kind of like will come apart a little bit, but also like it'll hold together. It's a little difficult to describe. Let me wash again. I didn't tell you either that this is really a half recipe. So normally I would make twice as much, so twice as much of all the every ingredient that I just described. And I really should have done that tonight. I wasn't thinking I had planned to do the half recipe. Because they're so good left over, just put them in a container and stick them in the fridge. You can heat them up in a toaster oven, in the oven, split them and heat them up on a skillet. You could pop them in the microwave. They're just so good left over. And they also freeze really well. So if you have a small family and wanted to go ahead and make the full-size batch, just go for it and freeze half. You can obviously cook these in a baking pan, but I love to use my cast iron one. My iron is just always low, historically low, and so the more I cook with my cast iron, the better my iron levels are, hemoglobin levels, and so I do it for my health, but also these are grandma's skillets. It makes me happy to bake with her skillets. And they're like a nonstick pan, so they're super easy to clean. So that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then there's like a little bit left. So that can be my little sample one. And I put a little butter in the skillet, put it on the stove, and just melted that down to coat the bottom of my skillet, which of course will taste great. But if your cast iron is seasoned really well, you don't have to do it. I did that mostly for flavor. And then I'm going to just put a clean tea towel over the top, set it back in the corner, and let them rest for about 30 minutes, and then I'm going to bake. And now that I'm done with this for today, I'm so tempted to make something else, but I don't really need anything else. I'm not going to. I'm just going to put my cheesecloth back on top, put my lid on, and put it back in the fridge. And when I'm ready to bake again in a couple weeks, it'll be ready for me. All right, everybody, welcome back. The biscuits rested on the counter for about 30 minutes. That's not for them to rise. It's just to kind of rest. It's a quick bread. We don't want it to be tough or anything. So let them sit on the counter to rest, and then baked them at 400 for 20 minutes. And now we have to try one. So for supper tonight, I was supposed to have something else. That needed spinach. I accidentally used up all the spinach the day before, so we couldn't have that. And I had chicken in the freezer, but that was going to take a really long time to thaw. So we're having eggs and bacon tonight. Eggs and bacon and biscuits and smoothie. So I just feel like I always tell you a whole bunch of secrets on myself, but I'm kind of bad about forgetting what I have in the fridge and the pantry and that kind of thing. And this summer, my kids worked at a local camp a lot, and so I had more time to myself than I've ever had in my whole entire adult life. And I actually cleaned out the freezer, and I found all these partial bags of frozen fruit. There's even a bag of spinach. I was like, this is perfect. It was frozen spinach, so I couldn't use it in my recipe as I intended, but I could use it for a smoothie. So we're having smoothie, eggs, bacon, and biscuits. Hang on, let me tell my daughter she can come in. Okay, so we're going to be having these with eggs and bacon. Maybe somebody will have butter and jelly. This is some strawberry jam that I made last year. Let me just go ahead and have a big one so I can show you. You got to remember when you bake in your cast iron that your handles are hot. These biscuits have an amazing flavor and texture. They stay together really well. They're not super crumbly like a lot of, that's actually too big of a piece of butter, even for me. They're not crumbly like a lot of gluten-free biscuits are. So we'll let that butter start to melt. You can make egg sandwiches with these. You could do some sort of batch cooking or cook ahead, like a prep type thing. I used to have a towel hanging there. I don't know what happened to it. And make your biscuits, fry a bunch of eggs, bacon, sausage, whatever. Wrap them up in foil or parchment, stick them in the fridge or the freezer, and just reheat those on busy mornings. Like I said, these do freeze, refrigerate, reheat beautifully. Hold together nicely. They're so good. I keep this little notebook here in the kitchen. This is where I write down recipes when I'm creating recipes. And this was the biscuit recipe, and I wrote perfect in all caps and underlined it twice. So I'll make little notes, you know, I need to change this, it needed more salt, it was too salty, that kind of thing. Perfect. And in my opinion, they are perfect for a gluten-free sourdough too, so you get the benefits of sourdough. And I hope you love this recipe as much as me personally and my family are loving them. You can find the recipe, I'll have it linked down below. It is written up for you in an easily printable format. It is not in the notes, but there's a link in the notes that will take you to my website, Total Wellness Health Coaching, where there's a recipe tab and you can find all of my recipes, and you just click print and you can get a little printable version or just read it off your computer screen. So the recipes are there for you. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you will subscribe and like and share and hit that notification bell. If you hit that notification bell, it will tell you when I publish a new video, which is about every week. We're into the school season, so it's busy and may not be exactly every week, but I try my best. So if you don't hit that notification icon, you won't necessarily see my videos unless you go searching for them. So definitely do that. Leave a comment down below, introduce yourself. I would love to get to know you. And again, share and subscribe and do all that stuff, because that tells YouTube that you like this kind of video. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you have a great day, everybody, and I will see you next time.